Thank you for joining us, team, ladies and gentlemen. So I think quickly to begin with, I would like us to start with introductions. Probably from Dennis, a brief about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I don't know whether the mic is working, but yes, my name is Dennis Volemi. I'm the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Diamond Trust Bank. Yes, that's what I do. Back to you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Valentine. I work for KCB Group, specifically looking after fintech and startup partnerships.
Morning everyone, thanks for having me here, man. Really excited to be here today. My name is Faisal Omar. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Pesalik.
Good morning everyone, my name is Lucy Kimani. I work at a fintech, Sasape, and my role is in tech.
Asante sana. Thank you, everyone. So I think we would want to keep this as a conversational, and we have banking experts in the group, we have industry ecosystem players, and we have fintechs as well. So it's a good combination of, you say the both worlds. So first, probably, I would like to touch with Dennis. And Dennis, I think one thing which really stood out was your role and your title. We have not heard this probably in Kenya, where somebody has a title of Chief Information and Digital Officer. We have always heard a separation, Chief Information Officer or Chief Digital Officer. So please tell us more about this.
So, and it's really a pickup from what I think the nice presentation Hartnell made about the different maturity levels and how the observations in terms of the role players within every organization at the different maturity levels of digital transformation. So from our perspective as a DTB, we are trying to digitalize the business end to end. So our strategy is to ensure that we're not just building the lipstick, the front end, that we actually need to digitize not just the customer experiences we're building against our products and services, but also to digitize the back office. That's critical because the fundamentals in terms of infrastructure you need in place, the traditional financial services rails that you require to run a digital business are very different. I think the first speaker talked about the requirement for stability of infrastructure. You can build a nice app, but if the underlying core and infrastructure is not stable, and then you have not really met your digital transformation goals. So the whole essence of my role is to ensure that, yes, we are digitizing the experiences that we're offering our customers, but we're also digitalizing the back office and the infrastructure that sits beyond these digital channels. And on top of that, I think my role is very unique because I'm one of the few CIOs with a P&L. So over and above the fact that I am assisting and transforming every business to digitize, I also have a P&L. And when I sit on the table, I am talking about the revenue that digital and IT is bringing to the business. Thank you.
Interesting. Wow. So tell us something. There are many banks today who want to start the journey, okay? And we want to discuss today here not what open banking is or what an API is. I think we have all been beyond those terminologies. But today we want to take the discussion and saying, okay, what does a bank need to do to start that particular journey? What are the foundations that need to be laid to take the bank to the next level and not only talk rhetoric, but we put in some action. So with this panel, the experience that you have built over the years, like working with different large, medium organizations, now leading the DTB side, how should a bank, take on their first steps?
Okay. So first of all, it's to ensure that, so of course there's how we use APIs within the technology environment to support integration. My focus isn't going to be that because I think that's given. Today, I think in a lot of RFPs, when you're buying a system or you're building a platform, part of the requirement is that every platform needs to be API ready. And the reason for that is exactly what you said, that you want to ensure that every functionality and data can be exposed through APIs. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. From a monetization perspective, how do you get an API or banking as a service business started? First of all, you have to look at it as a business. So it is a business. It's not a bunch of systems and technologies to play around with. It is a business. And I say that because you have to actually, how do you build a business? You build a business by defining what is the value proposition you will offer, who are your customers, who's your target audience, and how exactly are you going to make money. So it's important to look at it as a business from the get-go. The second thing is to ensure that you then have got the right people and competencies within the organization. So typically you had channel or product managers for CASA, current account, saving accounts in traditional banks. You have to have API product managers or banking as a service product managers so that these people can curate or package the different banking services you have into productized services that can actually be sold to the target audiences in the market. So you require the right people, which in a nutshell would be product managers, developers, API developers, and people generally who can go out there and sell APIs to products. Let me talk about the selling bit. You can imagine people who sell current accounts and savings accounts, can they sell APIs to fintechs? Yeah. So you also then need to build competency of people who understand the language that fintechs and non-banks talk, so that they're able to position the products and services you have in a manner that they are sellable. So moving away from resources, you then need to look at the regulatory environment. What exactly is it that you need to do? If you're going to partner with unregulated entities like fintechs and they're onboarding customers onto stores of value or payments as a service, cards as a service, you need to consider what type of regulation do you need to have in place to ensure that when you do launch and go live with these partnerships in the B2B to C model, that you are not contravening any regulations. So that's critical. You also need to develop a market or developer engagement strategy. And this is part of why DTBX is here, as a couple of my colleagues in the back. And what we're trying to do is to ensure that we are engaging the market developers to make sure that you understand what products and services we have, and we then can encourage you to come and work with us. So at a high level, those are the critical things. Of course, there are many other elements like security, how do you secure the platform, etc. In terms of the types of technologies that you need to put in place, a lot of people have built them in-house. They're off-the-shelf products that out there that you can get and implement with support from vendors. They're also open source technologies that you could pick up and implement your API strategy against.
Super. Thank you for the insightful response. I think it leads me to the next question to Valentine, and he's mentioned about selling APIs. Okay, and I know based on your role, you are the fintech and startup manager at KCB. Tell us more about this role, because these roles have never been heard before in the banking industry.
Yeah, and I think that's feeding onto something that he said. It's one thing for you to think about APIs, but how do you get them to be used? How do you get customers to know about them? And then also being in their face to understand what's happening in the ecosystem. So a typical day for me looks at being the face of the bank when talking to fintechs, and the bank realizing that the DNA of a fintech is not your corporate customer, it's not your retail bank customer. They've got a certain expectation, a certain language, a certain way they want to work and speak. And then taking a landscape view of what are the needs, what are the trends, what's happening, and then how do we take the capabilities within the bank, package them in a way that's easy for them as fintechs to use. And so we start thinking about, okay, how can I support and enable you as a fintech that's using our open and public API, so I'm your payment rails, I can do your ABC. But then also getting into more intimate partnerships where we're saying, how do we co-create new products? How do I help you grow your business as a fintech, leveraging on what the bank can do, and then what is the capacity or services that we have as a bank that we can then extend. So that means that I'm talking to Visa and saying, okay, help me, how do we craft a product for cards? I'm talking to PesaLink and saying, how do we collaborate to bring this service up to fintech? So half the time you're playing product, half the time you're in tech, but most of the time it's customer obsession around fintechs and how the bank can be a partner.
Wow, that's a powerful, powerful place to be in this today's day and age. Tell me, how are APIs transforming the banking landscape? Since you are primarily, most likely owning the entire API landscape, or they are kind of reporting to you. So how do you think that's transforming?
So the API movement within our bank has been transformational in a couple of ways. So one was, we are 127 years old. So when we want to play in a space that's got your neobanks, that's got all these digital fintechs coming on, we really do need to step up our game because our customers expect a certain level of digital experiences and etc. So we've had to go through internal digital transformation just to increase efficiency, how we're moving, and APIs have really helped us fast track how soon we're able to move and even move between our legacy systems and newer platforms that are coming into the bank. So that's been critical for us. The second thing has been just bringing standardization across, especially the group. So you can see we're working with a couple of subsidiaries, and sometimes you want to reuse infrastructure, you can't keep investing in building the same across the group. So APIs have really helped us to scale our infrastructure, standardize and bring the entire group to the same technology level platform, regardless of the country we're operating in, and that has definitely come with cost savings, lower technical debt for our tech team, and that's just been amazing in that way. But then it's also opened an opportunity and a new way for us to either serve our customers by being a partner in their digital transformation journey. So I'm talking about a corporate that's built their ERP, but before we're telling them, yeah, you still have to go to the bank. So how do we kill that, bringing that new customer experience for them, reducing the friction, and that we think has really delighted our customers. But then also opening new revenue streams with some of the products that he was talking about based off just thinking about APIs as a tool that can be monetized for the bank.
Wow, super. I think a few things which you touched there was so wonderful, like new revenue streams are things which many banks are looking after or looking up to, but they have a journey which they could adopt using APIs, but still in the procrastination stage. So what you're saying is the elephant can dance, even if it's a 125-year-old, so the elephant in the room can dance, guys. Good, good. Faisal, over to you. I mean, you know, why is open banking so relevant in the industry today?
So I think open banking, from my perspective, is relevant today because not only just open banking, but let's say if we extend that terminology to open finance. So traditionally, if you look at the banking industry, you know, a lot of banks over 125 years and so on have been offering very bundled kind of solutions to customers, right? So usually if a customer is engaged with a bank, he'll probably get his mortgage from him, he'll probably get his loan from him, credit cards, etc. So all the services are bundled for a customer. But as we move forward, we are seeing a lot of this unbundling happening in the market, where customers are now becoming very customized. So you can imagine that everyone here in the room may not have the same apps on his phone, right? So because you're customizing your requirements and your experiences yourself, you're actually curating that yourself. So the banks have to react to that by unbundling some of these services and creating APIs and services that fintechs and PSPs and other enablers can consume and provide services to the customer. So imagine an insurance tech startup will need some sort of financial services in the back end. So they need to be able to connect to APIs that banks offer to offer same services to their customer base. So in the future, we'll see a lot of movement towards banking as a service and a term called embedded finance, where a lot of the banking operations really become transparent to the consumer. So take the experience of Uber, for example, right? So everyone who's got an Uber here today, you've probably made a payment, and there's a bank in the back end that has processed that payment, has done the transaction for you. So the customer doesn't really care about which bank it was as long as the payment was done. So coming back to the question about open banking, why is it relevant? Is for this ecosystem to evolve, there needs to be an infrastructure or an ecosystem that allows fast flexibility and fast delivery and time to market. One of that is open banking, where we can now build protocols and standards, allowing fintechs, allowing enablers, allowing network providers to be able to inherit and consume some of these services from banks. And there's an important element there around standardization as well, right? So how do we get a country to move quickly towards this environment is, let's have a standard set of API protocols that the banking industry can use, and not only limited to them, but anyone else that wants to do API integrations between each other and between industries. We've seen that happening in many countries. In Europe, there's the PSD2 standard. India, Brazil, Australia, UK have all implemented different standards for standardized open banking. And I think that helps then accelerate how quickly services can be delivered and customized to this changing market phase of how consumers consume financial services.
Interesting. So you mentioned a very important point of standardization, because you are currently an ecosystem player and your business primarily is going to be APIs, because you connect with all the different third parties, banks, and fintech players. So how is standardization important, and how can we be able to, as a country, start on the journey of adoption standardization?
So I'm glad to say that actually everyone here on the panel is one of our partners. So all of you are connected to PesaLink. And the reason that has happened is because we have been able to create some sort of a standard for that integration. And the fact that you can now send a transaction from BTB to KCB via SasaPay means that all the three partners are using a standard implementation. So for us to move forward, it's important that the more we bring more services to the ecosystem of financial services, that a standard is implemented and enabled at all parties, whether they're a bank, a non-bank, or a fintech, or a PSP, so that we can both consume as well as provide those API services to different parties in the ecosystem.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lucy, we are on the fintech side of it. They are the big boys on the other side, and they think, we probably are not as significant to create a disruption. Tell me something. What role does technology play in the disruption? Things like open source technologies, which probably most of the fintechs adopt to first, building a robust and innovative platform, which most of the banks take time to adopt, and you have that capability or the agility to do. So what's your take on technology and how it's helping you transform?
So technology is really of importance, and I think I'll speak to some of the things that have been said here. So there's the effect of ability to build solutions. So when you're looking at fintechs, and SasaPay is also a PSP, we are required to evolve quite fast, and we have customers who the expectation is a lot within a short duration of time. So there is the need for us to be robust, there is the need for us to collaborate, and there's also the need for us to be secure. I mean, we are playing in the field of finances, and this is something that is a pain point or very sensitive to a lot of people. So technology as we have it, especially open source, when we look at fintechs, we're coming into a field where a lot of us do not have the muscle to start using proprietary software. So we have to look at what can we use, and what is readily available allows for us to collaborate, allows us to have communities, and we can quickly go back in case of a challenge and have people who are talking to each other and helping to build on what has already been established, as well as come up with very innovative ideas. So what has been said by Faisal, I think I've interacted with all of them in different spaces. And the one challenge is the agility part of it. As a fintech and in technology where you're expected to be offering solutions quite fast, we find that banks are a bit slow on the process. So we are always looking to have, what can I do next? How can I offer the same service to the clientele, but using a different option? So if I go to DTB and I find the process is a bit slow, I'll go to KCB, see whether they are still offering, because I'm still looking for the same thing, remember? So I'll have to jump ship up until I get to PesaLink, and they're telling me, you know what, I got you on this particular thing. So that is, I believe there is a lot that can be done in the technology space.
Thank you, Lucy. I think I found the reason why banks probably don't like fintechs is because of the loyalty. Fintechs are not loyal. I mean, wherever they get the services, they move there very fast. You move to, we have the banks here, and probably going to the other very important question for a fintech. You know, as much as banks have their share of challenges, but as a fintech, what are some of the challenges you face, you know, connecting with the banks, you know, in making sure that your product goes out to the customer?
I think it has been touched on, and that is the standardization. And I believe my biggest challenge to the banking sector would be come and identify what fintechs need, because most of the fintechs need the same thing. And when you have that understanding, then you're developing APIs that are standardized, that it is easy for me to use the documentation that has been provided on the API by one of the banks, because it is fast and it is efficient and it helps me serve the purpose. But because, again, I want to offer my customers the ability to access their specific banks, so it means that I have to integrate with all the banks, which is not something that I want to put in as a resource, put in the time, put in the effort into doing all that. So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of standardization. And again, the regulations and the compliance aspect of it, which was touched on by Dennis, because when we work in a space where I'll say, I'll speak a bit biased on this end, as a licensed PSP, and then you go to the bank and they're not really identifying and looking at you as someone who's complying to the same regulator that they are complying to, that poses a challenge, right? Because we're still responding to the same regulator. We're still going through the same challenges to comply. So we need to have collaborative efforts and look at fintechs as your biggest potential of growth, even in something that Valentine talked about, co-creating products to serve the larger market, because we are risk takers as fintechs. We are very agile. We are doing it fast. So when you do not want to put in that effort, we will put in that effort and be able to offer the services together.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting. We have about 2.5 minutes to wind up this session. So if anyone has a question, please come on to the mics to ask the panel any question. I have one final question, in which I would bring it again to Dennis to help us. So, Dennis, what are some of the elements banks should look at in their BaaS, okay, or the API strategy to unlock value and drive digital transformation? And help us understand in forms of building blocks, so that the other banks who are looking or listening up to you could start adopting from your lessons and take, you know, an action immediately.
Okay, thank you. So, and I think I might replace some of the stuff that my colleagues have talked about. The first thing is that, remember, if you are trying to use APIs to digitize the organization in terms of all the systems and technologies within the bank, the first thing is you have to ensure that every platform that you have within the organization is API ready. What that allows you is that you can then expose functionality to other systems, both within and when you're trying to externalize services for purposes of monetization. So that's critical. Review the entire landscape of systems and applications within the enterprise. And the objective is to ensure that every platform is API ready, so that when you start your product development, when you're trying to put together and curate different services, you can easily expose them because the underlying systems of record are API ready. That's number one. Number two, as I said, every bank now needs an API strategy and look at APIs as a new channel. So it needs to have its own P&L, it needs to have the necessary investments in terms of people, process, and technology to ensure that the business thrives. So look at the API businesses, you know, the way you have internet banking, mobile banking, you need to look at APIs or banking as a service, as a separate business, and create the necessary resources, both in terms of people and process, to ensure that that business thrives. An important consideration, of course, it's regulation. Regulation is critical. We're regulated entities. There's nothing wrong with regulation. Regulators are doing their jobs. So it's a realization that they're not trying to stop you, but they are trying to play their role in the market to ensure that the financial system is stable. So understanding the regulation and understanding how to approach the regulator to get your stuff going is critical. And also then having a strategy in terms of how you engage the market. Remember, as I said, fintechs are not opening bank current accounts and savings accounts, so you need to have the necessary people within the organization that can speak the language and explain the different products that you have to the market. But most importantly, you need to be able to monetize, because this is not charity, right? We're here to make money, so everything you're building, ensure that the monetization bit is working well, and then you can go to market.
Thank you. I think you touched on a very important point of monetization, which needs a whole probably session around it, so we'll not delve into it. If there are any questions, yes, right. Good afternoon, Bright.
From a security perspective, in the past, I think 3 or 4 years now, one of my biggest asks is always about API security. As of last time, I said compromise a very big organization in Kenya because of API security. And then the amount of data leaks that I have in the world because of API security is becoming, it's becoming too much. And I don't see a lot of organizations taking this to be a very serious part of things. And that's the next phase. We are going to get embarrassed as a country because of API security. I wanted to get from the panel, what are you people doing to be able to make sure that API security becomes a core part of business? Because yes, it's making money and everything, but customer data is becoming at risk. Being able to compromise people's accounts is becoming at risk, all because of API security. I don't know what the panel has to say about that.
Sure. Thank you, Bright. It's open to who would like to take on this. Dennis, you want to go?
Yeah, so maybe I can go first. A good challenge, and indeed it's true. And maybe just to, I don't think APIs themselves are any special. I think banks or anybody who's offering digital experiences has the same challenge. And you would know that as banks started to use mobile banking, historically we've had a lot of security issues. I think everybody's beginning to get a hold of that. So yes, one of the critical pillars in terms of capabilities to ensure that as you're beginning to put these platforms out there, they are secure by design. Other than the design process itself, to ensure that you have API security in place, and there are products available out there that are able to secure your APIs from any threat actors out there. It's important to go through the process, both internal testing from a security perspective to assure yourselves, and also engage third parties to come to do some red teaming exercises to ensure that you're able to defend yourself from external threat actors. So acknowledging that it's a big problem, it's a big threat. What I'm saying is that there's technology out there to secure APIs, but they need to be built secure by design from the word go, and then you go through the necessary assurance processes to ensure that after you go live or launch, that you're not exposing any new significant risks to the business. But yes, acknowledge it's a big challenge. Thank you.
I think from where we sit, one of the things that's been critical beyond the securing our technologies, also start thinking about data protection for our customers. So that includes, number one, when I'm onboarding you as a fintech partner, I want to understand how does your architecture sit, what's your infrastructure, what's your data protection policy, have you done all this? As we roll out APIs and new partnerships, we're also doing data protection impact assessment, which means that from the word go, everybody in the room is aware of what could go wrong, and that has really helped us seal a lot of loopholes around the clock. And I think beyond that, it's also constant consumer awareness, especially when we start talking about open APIs, just creating the awareness within the consumer that if you authenticate for your data to be released, this is what it means, XYZ. But then also instilling the confidence in them to know that they have the switch to sort of say, okay, don't share my data with XYZ platform anymore. So I think consumer education and awareness is something that we really have to put out there, making sure that the partners we're onboarding as a bank comply in terms of policy, procedures, and have a way of handling that, but then also doing those data impact assessments to safeguard ourselves and the customer from such breaches.
Thank you, Lucy. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think I'll speak from a fintech perspective and say that what we are implementing is ensuring that we have continuous testing, continuous having third parties as well as internal parties within the organization aware of, like Valentine has said, what could go wrong, as well as just doing it in a process of everyone is not aware that we are doing this, in terms of it's by surprise. So if this happens, how secure are we, or what can we do better to ensure that we are up to par to the standards in the organization, as well as educating and certifying our personnel within the organization.
So maybe if I can just add on to that, I think the issue about security is a consequence of a lack of standards, right? Because every partner here would be having a certain criteria of how they can onboard a customer, and they'll have certain security standards that you need to match. But I think it is up to us as an industry to come up with that standardization methodology across the API integration platforms, and leave the central bank or the regulator to just do an oversight in terms of how these implementations and how this connectivity happens. So I think one of the things that's missing is standardization will also take care of security, will take care of the connectivity side, will take care of sandboxing. How does a customer get approved to consume the API or to produce data into the API? And I think for us as an industry, that's one of the challenges that we need to overcome fairly quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Faisal. Any more questions?
We're good for time.
Good. Fine. We'll just take few minutes and wind up. So please, if we could have a 30-second, takeaway, a key takeaway for the banks who are here. What do you think they should do to onboard or to start on their journey?
Well, I think maybe based on the topic of our discussion, the future is indeed API driven.
Is it the future? Is it now?
It's now really. But as and I think Faisal talked about it a little. As customers begin to consume financial services on non-bank platforms, it's inevitable that banks require to offer APIs to support, or banking as a service to support embedded finance, and to also create new business models that are both B2B2C. So you don't just need to serve customers through your channels, that you can serve other people's customers utilizing your rails through B2B relationships. So the future is really API driven, and banks need to get started. I think we've talked a lot about how, and we're happy to engage. And for the fintechs in the room, feel free to speak to us. There's a group of my colleagues, the DTBX at the back. Come and talk to us and see how we can work together. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Dennis. Valentine.
I think to the banks in the room, it's when you look at a fintech, there's a way to get to a win-win position. there's a thing the fintech needs from you. It could be regulatory coverage. It could be using your distribution network, which means you're able to do more with the assets that you've brought in and really sweat and get your ROI. And when you look at these fintechs, also start thinking about them as innovation partners. How do I take the product that this fintech has built for me to access a new niche market, whether it's in agri, whether it's in insurance, etc., and really start accelerating innovation within. And to the fintechs in the room, it's like banks, we are not all big, bad, and scary. It's just that we've got the risk, compliance, etc., that we want to do. And I think we're already meeting you halfway by putting in the sort of initiatives and programs that we've got running so that make it easier for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just come and ride on what has been there and get to market faster.
Super.
Right, for us as PesaLink, we are in a unique position to actually offer value chain both downstream towards the banks as well as towards the fintechs, right? So we are actually an enabler that allows a lot of the fintechs, a lot of the banks to provide services on a platform that is across a network platform. So we are today connected to 37 banks, 9 fintechs, 1 telco, and we're still connecting a lot more partners onto the network. So for us as PesaLink, we are an enabler. We allow people to be able to route transactions today from account to account, but doesn't stop us from innovating to do a lot of more use cases around merchant payments, bulk disbursements, etc. So, quite happy to connect with anyone that wants to join PesaLink as an enabler platform to power your business and payment transactions.
Thank you, Faisal.
So for me, I will say that as SasaPay, we pride ourselves as a fintech or fintechs. So if you do not want to go through the journey, we have gone through the trenches for you. So we are ready to partner with you as fintechs as well as the banks to co-create products for the market. So we are ready and you're very much welcome.
Thank you, Lucy. So we'll wind up this session. I'll repeat what Jeff Bezos said earlier, that this was in 2002, and you could imagine what 2002 has done to Amazon today. All teams will henceforth expose their data and functionality through APIs. So this is our takeaway from this panel session, and I hope you enjoyed our session. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. Take a photo. Guys, let's take a photo. Dennis, let's take a photo.